I'll see the same. You won't see another morning, you won't see another evening tonight. Wait a minute, señorita, señorita, buenos noches, bye bye. Carry trauma, you won't see another evening goodbye. Buenas noches, señorita, señorita, buenas noches, bye bye.
Dude,
there it is.
There it is. I love Al at the end, the bow and then the flip off, you know.
I know. That's so Al. That's so Al.
So that is the new video in its entirety. Al Wiedersehen with Al Jorgensen, Charlie Benante, and Brandon. Did Brandon from Crowbot sing on that too, or not?
He did sing some background vocals.
Yeah, nice. God, what a great singer he is.
Originally, when it was just me, it was just going to be me, and then Brandon was going to do background vocals, and then Al came in, and it kind of changed, but we kept Brandon on there anyway. So
yeah, and a funny note at the end. So Liz Walton, who is basically Mrs. Ministry, there's a couch. So that was in Al's studio, right at his house in LA. And she goes, I want to see you running around and get up on the couch. So at the very end, I pulled, as Tom would call it, my Tom Cruise risky business move and jumped on the couch and rocked out. And then at the end went, right? So before Al does his bow, I got the jump off of Al's couch. So that was my
good. And we did.
As close to kiss as I could get. Exactly. That was as close as I could get from jumping off an ego box. So
and big ups to Melody Myers for making that video. And
thank you, Melody.
Her and Thad Bridwell for shooting it. And we've been working on that thing for like over a month. And it's so exciting to finally have it done. Our friends at Nights with Alice Cooper released it today for us and earlier. And so it's going to be up on all of our shit, all of our social media and everything else. Probably after this live stream, we'll post it on Facebook so you can share it, watch it over and over again, share your friends. Please do. Speaking of which, please take a minute to share this live stream let everybody know what's going on, man. It's going to be pretty exciting tonight. It's a terrible situation, but it's going to be such an awesome live stream, man, where you're going to talk about the legacy and life of Eddie Van Halen, who obviously we lost yesterday, and we got some great guests joining us. Alex Skolnick, Mike Portnoy, Steve Brown from Trickster, a bunch of John Five, Mike,
Craig Gass, And it's funny, this whole stream started over this one conversation today. So yesterday, a lot of fans, Megadeth fans, were talking about, obviously, rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. If it weren't for Eddie, if it weren't for Van Halen, we wouldn't have Running with the Devil. We wouldn't have the bass line by which Dave Mustaine and I met and started Megadeth. So tonight, this is the only bass line that matters. That's it. That's those, 8 notes. That's it. That's all that matters. So thank you, Eddie, for that. And hey, by the way, before we get into that, last night you and I were talking about a new coffee. And I just want you to know, I went down to Expressions, who was our roaster here in town, and we found the new, I tried it today. It's friggin' awesome. It tastes delicious. It's got nice, good impact. So tell us about the coffee.
Yeah, so last night me and David were talking, and we should do a combat blend, and we're going to do a combat blend called Napalm Morning. So there you have it, folks, because I don't know about you, but I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Dude, I love the smell of this coffee right now. My God, this is freaking awesome. So, and it's going to be, so if people are thinking, well, what does it taste like? So it's in the Roast in Peace-ish family, but it's a little darker, a little heavier, a little more napalm.
A little more kick. Exactly.
A little more napalm. Yeah.
That's right.
So like Tom said, obviously we know the internet has been blowing up as it should. With
everything. My whole feed for 2 days.
Our love and honorarium of Eddie Van Halen. Greg Handovit and I were talking because he and I were, we were record buddies growing up, and he hit me today. He said, dude, remember the needle drop on Van Halen 1 when that came out? I had just gotten done going through like my Kiss phase. Kiss was the only band that mattered at all in the entire world. And then I kind of went through that, and then the Van Halen record came out. And I bought records just based on how cool the covers were. And when I saw that cover of Van Halen, I'm like, those 4 dudes rock. I mean, that is awesome. And so I took the record home, needle drop, and when I heard the siren going in, and then that, this right into this. And you know what's funny?
Yeah.
You know what Roman pointed out yesterday, because I picked him up at the airport. He flew home, and you know what he noticed, because we were listening to it on Sirius XM driving home. He noticed the little guitar scrape, the string scrape, which is like up here, right? The little, right, which is right at the beginning after the bass thing. There's this little, thing, right? And that right there just defines. I mean, the song, we're not even 20 seconds into the song, and already you hear the cleverness of what we would then learn of Eddie Van Halen.
Oh, yeah. Something that now is like literally, that's like a standard in metal and hard rock,
Yeah. Those kind of things, just that. Then I remember pulling in the garage and listening to Eruption came on. And I mean, my God, just that is one of those albums that top to bottom, every song amazing. And just the tones, just everything about it. I mean, top to bottom. Michael Anthony's bass playing is great, of course, and Roth was just amazing. And there's a demo, but I remember Willie G had the demo, and people here probably know about it. There was a demo, might have been the Gene Simmons demo, actually, of some of those songs before they got signed to Warner Brothers. And then, of course, Ted Templeman came in and produced that first record. Ted Templeman also produced the first Montrose record, who would ironically bear a later Van Halen singer named Sammy Hagar.
Never heard of him.
Kind of interesting that Ronnie was signed to Warner Brothers, used Ted Templeman, and then 7 years later, they bring Ted Templeman in to produce this new guitar hero in his band, Eddie Van Halen. So
another cool thing I want to talk about real briefly before we fully move on into Van Halen world is today I got the test pressings for the vinyl for No Cover Man, and I got to literally for the first time listen to this record in a physical format in sequence, and it was everything I'd hoped for and more.
Nice. Yeah, that's funny. I did a podcast earlier today, and I was talking about how great, like there's a lot of nuances to this no cover record. Obviously, there's these amazing songs, and we get these unique artists, Jorgensen, Charlie Benante, 18 songs, 18 guests is probably right. So you honor, of course, the guests because they have their own unique stamp. But then obviously the sound of our Ellefson band is kind of the underpinning of the whole thing. So, to go in and mix this record was really an interesting process because you need to honor all those things, the artists, the guests, the band, and of course, keeping the song intact. We didn't come in and just, bloody a bunch of distortion and just bombast over these tunes because these songs are legendary and people know them, so it was a fun thing to do. I'd say probably one of the most fun records I've ever made in my entire life.
That's awesome, man. I actually did a fun little podcast today on the Metal Hall of Fame on their page. I was on. That's when you called me in the very end of that, and it was cool. I said I might come back on next week and drag you on with me, but we had a great chat about no cover and coffee and combat and everything, Supreme Being, all the EMP stuff, combat, everything. So it was fun, man. It was fun. So man, we got a full dressing room backstage here.
Let's bring them in. Let's get people in here. Let's talk. They hear us talk all the time. Let's get some of our buddies in this mix.
Let's start bringing some cats in. Who should we bring in first? All right, see, look, there's Mr. Mike Portnoy. Hi, Mike Portnoy.
What you doing, buddy? How are you?
How you
What's
doing?
Going on?
Can you hear me? Is my mic
we
on?
can hear you. Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Yep, we can hear you.
Hey,
John 5.
Mr. 5.
Good to see you.
Now it's a party.
It's funny. It's like between me, Tom, and especially Portnoy's room, it looks like we live at Tower Records. And then you go over to John's house, and it's clean. It's like looks like a real rock star's house. It's pristine.
That's nice.
So what's going on, you guys? So Mike, you're in Pennsylvania. John, you're in LA, I assume, right?
Yes.
Nice,
So
nice.
yeah, just it's been a rough couple of days. That's for sure.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, look, let's start there, man. Give us your thoughts on on everything. Let's top to bottom.
Well,
let's start with Eddie.
It's been very, very tough. But we all knew that Ed was not well, but I never really expected him to pass, and I always thought, oh, he's going to beat it, and he's got the best.
No pun intended.
Yeah. And, but I was at Roth's house, and that was the time. Like it was a little while ago. I guess a few months ago, and that was the one time where I thought, oh my God, this is he's really in bad shape because he was like, Ed's not doing well, and it's not looking good. And I was starting to well up, and I was like, okay, just keep it together, and because that was it was like one of your parents telling you, something isn't right. And I was like, all right, let's keep it together. But when I found out yesterday, I was so shocked, and I was on the freeway, and I pulled off the freeway, and I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Exactly a year ago, we did the mega cruise, right? And Mike, you and I have had many talks about cruises because you've done your cruise to the edge. So we've had the cruise chat. So Megadeth had our first one. Dave Mustaine could not be there. He was actually just finished his throat cancer treatments and was looking optimistic. We had not been given the complete green light on it, but it looked good. And I remember we got on the boat. I got up into my stateroom, and I saw there was an announcement from David Lee Roth. He said Van Halen is done, and we were like, whoa. And then right after that was the press release that talked about Eddie having his throat cancer. Now that obviously hit very close to home in the Megadeth camp with everything going on in our world with throat cancer in particular, and you could tell by that press announcement it was not good. And I lost a brother to colon cancer, and it's interesting that they gave him 2 years to live, and I mean, it was 2 years to the week. I mean, like almost to the day. And so it's interesting, of course, these doctors, they know what they can what they can treat and what they can't. And so, you're right. You kind of have a sense like, oh boy, one day we're going to get that message. And,
yeah, but we kind of figured Eddie was going to beat it because we've been hearing about his tongue and his
right.
Whatever that cancer was. That was about
right.
15 years ago or so. So you kind of start to think, okay, they got this. They're going to beat it. They're immortal, and then you hear the rumors cropping up over the past year or so that he's not doing well, and you kind of just always assume these guys are immortal. Like your brother Dave Mustaine is, he's doing great. He's kicking ass, and you kind of assume that once you're over the hump, you're good, and then something like this happens, and it's just shocking.
Well, I tell you, when we were together with Megadeth on the Five Finger Death Punch tour in January, we rehearsed for a week in Nashville, and we took it really easy, and we just said, Dave, whatever you can sing, those are the songs we play. Whatever it is, it's just everybody's just going to be glad to see you, and we're glad that we can even be on stage playing together again. I mean, there's a real moment of gratitude.
Yeah. Well, I think the last time I was this shocked was Neil Peart. I mean, honestly, that was kind of out of the blue, just like that. No one saw it coming, and that's literally the last time I think I've been so just taken aback by someone passing. Well,
it's interesting, Mike. I hit you right away on the Neil Peart thing because I knew you were one of the very few people that Neil let into his inner circle, and you were always very gracious about that. And I hit you, and you'd said, look, obviously, I probably knew more than most people just because I was on the inside. But there are things. I mean, you respect people's privacy, especially when it's something like that. And again, you came out and wrote a really nice post about Neil, kind of talking about that thing. I mean,
Neil, I mean, I knew, maybe 3 years in advance, and he, and I'm not saying anything out of line here. It's been well documented that he was given, maybe a year or so, and he went for 2 more years.
Wow.
And that's another example of how you kind of think that your heroes like this are superheroes and they're immortal and they're going to beat it. And even Neil hung in there, and even kind of half expecting it and dreading it, it was still a shock. It's no less shocking. And we should mention, I mean, both Neil and Edward, Eddie Van Halen, these are 2 huge losses, I think, on the level of, John Lennon or Jimi Hendrix or John Bonham,
exactly.
Freddie Mercury. I think both of these are on that level. These are the kind of rock hero passings that just transcend. It was when Neil died, it wasn't just drummers commenting. My entire social media newsfeed for days was covered in Neil, and it's been the same with Eddie yesterday and today. And you have guys like this that transcend rock or hard rock or metal or their instruments. I mean, guys like Eddie and Neil are, legends that completely wrote the book on their respective instruments.
Well, and I like your post you put up yesterday that said Eddie was to the guitar what Neil was to the drums. And
totally.
Look, let's face it, in our generation, I'm 55. I think, Mike, you and I are close to the same age. John, I think you're, 29 and holding, something like that, right?
John just gets younger all the time.
So
John's younger than me now somehow.
Let's call it our generation, right? It hit me today. Van Halen was our generation's Led Zeppelin, because I miss Led Zeppelin just because of my age. By the time I started, going to the store and seeing Kiss Alive, I think Presence was out, and then in through the outdoor, and then it was over. Bonham died, and that was it. So I didn't get a chance to see him. But I think for our generation, just again what Jimmy Page did to the guitar, again just that Robert Plant being this icon. We had David Lee Roth. So it is our icons are passing, for whatever reason. I mean, Eddie was 65. He wasn't a young guy. I mean, especially in rock and roll years, and Eddie lived a very storied career, I mean, it's funny. I've come to find, and you guys probably have too, because we've gotten to work with some really amazing artists in our careers. When people are given that sort of a talent, it flows from them like it just literally comes from another planet. We watch it. And guess probably all of us on this thread are maybe some of that as well. But oftentimes that comes with another burden, and it's almost like it's very hard to harness that level of creativity inside the human flesh on an earthly plane. You know what I mean? And along with it come a lot of other things. It's and of course the lifestyle that we lead. I mean, dog years or rock and roll years are like dog years. It's like
I
right?
saw that harder than anybody this year, man. I mean, I was not here for 10 minutes, so
yeah. Well, you died had a heart attack, so I mean, and you're back from the,
I'm a zombie now.
So John, let me ask you something, because when I worked for Petey, back in 2002, Megadeth had disbanded, and I took a job doing artist relations for Peavey. And the first NAMM show was January 2003, and they brought Eddie to the show. It was not Eddie's good year by any means. He had just gone through, I think, the cancer stuff, and a lot of stuff. The band was in shambles, and it was really that. It was a low point for Eddie, and yet there's a couple thousand people at the booth, and I mean, it's Eddie, and you're sitting there and what hit me this week or today was like, Eddie, like a lot of us, we've hit some low bottoms, I myself have for sure with addictions and things. And for Eddie to finish on top was amazing, to be clean, to finish on top, to get David Lee Roth back in the band, which that's the same as the Eagles' Hell Freeze is over, as far as I'm concerned. For that to happen, and then they take it around the track, huge, it's big, and he got to finish on top. Yesterday I was watching that Jimmy Kimmel footage where he's playing Eruption, and it might just sadden us because we're never going to see that again,
And he looked great. He sounded great. I mean, again, it's like he was back. It was almost like it's crazy.
Yeah, but I guess, John, I wanted to ask you, when I saw. I got to go to Les Paul's 90th birthday in New York. Remember, there was a moment where Guitar Player Magazine and Bass Player Magazine combined forces that one year. And Hartley Peavey actually gave the sort of honorarium introduction talk. And, Hartley is a man of great innovation and patents and all this great stuff. And he introduced, Les Paul. I had no idea the stuff that Les Paul had invented, multi-track recording, flangers, phasers, all this stuff. And it really hit me, yesterday. Eddie, like there was probably no other guy who invented through the guitar and innovated.
Uh-oh. We lost you. We lost you, Davey.
Uh-oh. We lost him.
Hey, well, what we got to, there we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the audio's freaking out. So what I was going to ask you is, Les Paul being one of these guys who was just an innovator. Oh man, what the hell's going on?
Oh no,
we know you're good. You're good.
We got you.
Fucking StreamYard. So with that said, then Eddie comes along and does the same thing, either between the Wang bar, sticking pickups in surfboard wax, chainsawing guitars to put two of the Frankenstein, putting two of them together, to create a sound like. I don't know what is you're a guitar player. You're one of the celebrated guitar heroes of our generation. So what is your view on that with Eddie?
Well, see, Eddie, I believe, and I don't really talk about this, but I would sit on the phone a lot with Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
We would chit chat and talk about things, and Eddie's brain worked different than everybody else. He looked at something different than 99% of other people, how they look at things.
Right.
And that's why it's so devastating of his loss, because what he invented and his creation, I don't know, I'm pretty sure we'll never see anything like that before. Again, I remember plugging into his rig. I was at the Van Halen rehearsal, and I plugged into his rig and I played his guitar.
I hate when that happens.
And it sounded
well, you got to play Neil Peart's drums, so it's the equivalent. Okay?
Fair enough.
Completely nothing like Eddie Van Halen, But when Eddie Van Halen put on that guitar and played "So This Is Love," it was like, oh my God. So it doesn't matter if he played it on an acoustic guitar, you know, it was just in his hands.
Yeah.
But what I want to move this question to is a question to you guys is, and this is a very serious question. And I was talking to a lot of my friends about this today. We are losing, you know, a lot of our icons and a lot of our heroes. And what is next? You know, we have the 90s, let's say the 90s rock guys, you know, like the Horns and the Nine Inch Nailses and the, you know, all this stuff. They're in their 55s, you know, around that age. But what's going to happen? What's the next thing? What do we have in the horizon? Do we have another Van Halen? Do we have another Led Zeppelin? Or
no.
I don't know, Mike. What do you think? What's your thought on that?
Well, I mean, the days of this, you know, bands on that level from the 60s and 70s. You know, you started with the Beatles, the Stones, the Who, Pink Floyd, Sabbath, Purple, all English, by the way. I would say the first American arena supergroup was Kiss, and then I would say Van Halen was the next. And as far as American arena supergroups, we had Kiss, then came Van Halen, then came, you know, I would say probably Metallica and Guns N' Roses. And now in this generation, we have bands like Foo Fighters, you know. So there are bands like the Foo Fighters, I think, that can carry that arena rock tradition, you know, more stadium rock tradition, if anything, really.
Absolutely.
But, you know, the heroes that we grew up with, our generation, we grew up with, you know, Zeppelin, Beatles, Who, Purple, Sabbath, Van Halen, Kiss, Judas Priest. Those are our heroes. I don't know. They don't really make them like that anymore. It's a different world. It's a completely different world we're living in now.
Mike, that's a great point. Sorry, Dave. I think that's a great point. And that's what I was trying to get to is like Foo Fighters, you know, all that stuff. We still had real record companies.
Right.
Real people.
Magazines. MTV.
We had these huge monsters of promotion.
Right.
And we don't have that anymore.
No, it's a different world entirely.
The channels, you know, I used to always talk about this in interviews and people would ask me, and it's like the music business is like a skyscraper, but the top 50 floors are permanently closed. You just can't get to them anymore. You know, there's bands like Five Finger Death Punch or whatever that kind of snuck through while the gate was coming down. But I don't think the machine is in place or even exists anymore to create a band like that anymore.
Here's the other thing too that I wanted to mention, back to your point, John, is again the innovation. It really hit me that I think Eddie, and again, there's a lot of great guitar players, you being one of them. I mean, again, just mind blowing from another planet, like amazing, right? And you're one of them.
Thanks to Edward.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, exactly. And we all have our heroes to thank for it. But it's funny the stuff that Eddie did. You know, the tapping, the wang bar, the level of innovation that happened there. There's only so many things you can do with a piece of wood that has strings on it. There's only so much you can do. And he explored and tapped most of it. You know, Jaco Pastorius was the same in the bass guitar world. I always say Jaco was to the bass what Eddie Van Halen was to the guitar, right? And, you know, Neil Peart probably the same with the drums. I mean, with everything, cowbells, you know, triangles, chimes, everything you could possibly put into a kit. It's like he was an orchestra within himself. You know, we were in Japan or in China, I guess probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and Kiko made a point. He said, he goes, you have to he goes in his accent, he goes, you have to realize, man, the electric guitar is only about 15 years old over here. And I was like, fuck, you're right. I mean, really, it's, you know, it's true. I mean, the Western music, as they call it over there, Western music, which would include the guitar, right? This 6-string device. And you can plug it in. Wow. You know, that's in China, that is a pretty much new instrument, you know? This
is a conversation, a topic that we've had many nights on the Sons of Apollo tour bus. And for years, we always said that as far as we were concerned, we were in pretty much unanimous agreement that there were 3 innovators of the guitar. And you talk about Les Paul, that's in terms of actually the instrument itself. But in terms of playing, the game changers, it was, in our opinion, my opinion, it was Hendrix, then came Eddie Van Halen, and then this is maybe a bit of a more controversial choice, but Yngwie Malmsteen. I think Yngwie was a game changer as well.
I completely agree. I have to chime in. I completely agree with you. They were 3 epiphanies.
All 3 of them were total game changers.
If we go 4, I would say, Les Paul, Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, Yngwie Malmsteen, all completely epiphanies. They changed the game.
Right. You're right. There would be no sweep picking of that level without Yngwie really bringing that into the
a lot of the progressive side, especially on the progressive side. So I got a couple more people we're going to bring in here, hanging out in the wings. Steve Brown and Craig Gass are hanging out.
Hey,
gentlemen,
guys. What's up, guys? Nice guitar, Steve. Woo.
I recognize that I was given this shirt down in Argentina, and on the back they had this picture of this guitar. Now I know where it came from. So it's your guitar.
Steve Brown model, right?
I don't know. It's a Steve Brown guitar. Who knew? In Argentina, you're fucking a god, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Steve is one of the best Eddie Van Halen enthusiasts in terms of like totally copying his style. I've seen Steve play in a Van Halen tribute band and just nailed it, every nuance. So, man, if there's anybody that knows the insides and outs of his playing and his performance and his writing, I mean, that man right there with the Frankenstein knows his shit.
Thank you very much, Mike. And don't forget, we had a pretty good jam that night when you came up. We did the live version to Hear About It Later.
Yeah.
On stage. So what version to Hear About It Later we're doing? Are we doing the MTV video? I'm like, let's do it.
We did. We played some VH on at Eddie Trunk's 30th anniversary too. We did "On Fire" and "Light Up the Sky," and you nailed it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
Hey, Greg. Craig, how you doing, man?
Craig,
doing good, man.
Your post about staying at Eddie Van Halen's place was one of the coolest reads I've had in a long time. Amazing stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stories that came out of it. Just getting in that house was very surreal. Staying with a guy who's a hermit was very surreal. The experiences of being around him, like him, around that time, I guess Wolfie was just starting to learn how to play guitar, and he was telling me a story about how Wolfie had said to him a few years earlier, "I want to learn how to play guitar," and Eddie said. And every time I talk about Eddie, I always have like a cigarette in my mouth because he always would talk to me, and he'd always go. And he said, Wolfie came up to me and said, "I want to learn how to play guitar." And I said, "Okay, I'll try to find somebody to give you lessons." And he said, "I want you to teach me." And he goes, "Oh, okay. I don't know. Okay. And so Mike, did you give Max lessons or not?
No, I can relate because
I get it.
I'm a player, but I'm not a teacher. There's a big difference. Hey, brother Al.
I'm a guitar teacher. I was a guitar teacher. Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Hey. What's happening, Alex?
Yeah.
Good to see you guys. John, what's happening? What a surprise.
Hi, Alex.
Awesome.
How are you?
Well, I'm the same way, Mike. I would never give my kids bass lessons. I'd go find them a proper bass teacher. You know what I mean? So
just because we play, we don't necessarily have to teach, and we're always away, always on the road.
Yeah.
It's a party.
Look at Eddie's whole shtick was break the rules. So why do you want to teach somebody to break the rules, right? So,
exactly.
So Alex, what's happening? You know everybody here, I guess. Steve Brown, Craig Gass,
John Five.
John Five is hiding in the wings.
This is Mike Portnoy. Have you met?
Yeah. Oh man, it's good. It's good to see everybody. This is a tough one, and this is like
it is
total like mourning, like genuine grief. There's been so many losses, but this was really like relative type.
So give us your emotion of kind of obviously the news yesterday. We kind of knew about a health issue that was looming, but then to see it yesterday from Wolfgang's post, we all know Wolfie. We've played with him. He's played with us in Metal Allegiance on the Shiprock cruise, and
So a friend of ours, and to see that, and you realize this isn't just our hero, this is his dad, and just, I don't know, give us your kind of the emotion of that, of what happened yesterday for you.
Yeah, there's that, and I don't know, I never really knew Eddie. I just know his music so well. I feel like I know him, and still just one of the few players one of the few early inspirations that still is an inspiration. As I'm working on music, I think, what would Eddie do? You know what I mean? To just live with this person. And then the whole, all the reports about his health, well, he's had rough periods before. I mean, this has been going on since the 90s. And there was a period where his health was, but he always seems to come back.
Yeah.
And he's been in and out. He's had ups and downs. And I thought he was going to be like the hard rock Keith Richards. He's always there's always gonna be something. There's gonna be a tongue replacement, a hip replacement, some crazy health thing, but he'll come back. And it was a shock. I just thought, I was sure he's going to be around. He's going to be one of these guys that just
you kind of think, me and David just did this covers record, and I was talking about this earlier in an interview, so we covered Sweet and Queen and Twisted and all these bands, and I put this dedication in the record to all the guys that aren't with us anymore from these bands. And as I was writing it, I mean, I just realized the whole original lineup of Motorhead is gone. Everybody but one guy from Sweet is gone.
All the Ramones, the four original Ramones.
Ramones are all gone.
Yeah. I mean, it really hit me at that moment doing that. Like, God, we're losing our legends at a just alarming.
I know.
Yeah. And it's funny, Steve Priest from Sweet was a huge, just an idol to me. I mean, it was one of those bands I heard on the school bus radio, and that band changed my life. It's funny, when we played Metal Legions here in Phoenix, Mike, you and I were running down that Sweet Desolation Boulevard track.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you pointed out Sweet F.A.
Sweet F.A. Yeah.
And I revisited it again. I went, fuck, dude, that's the tune, man. I mean, that's
totally
great, So, but it's funny. Mike, Alex, and myself, 1 year with Metal Legions, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, we decided to play the first Van Halen album top to bottom. We started theming our shows around albums. And we did it at House of Blues Anaheim during NAMM, and then we went right over to Shiprock. And I remember, so Wolfie was playing bass for Mark Tremonti on the boat. And so you guys all knew him. It was like, let's get Wolfie up here. So I remember there was a moment where me and Frank Bello, because we were doing most of the harmony vocals for the stuff, and Frank is a great singer. And so there's a moment where me and Frank Bello and Wolfie were up in the chapel of the boat going over the lyrics for Running with the Devil, which had kind of poetic justice in a very rock and roll kind of way, But I remember asking him, I said, so what's
it's really hard.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, because we were double checking. It's like, Wolfie, you're the guy singing this stuff. Are these pitches right?
They make it sound so easy. Those vocals are
sweet.
Not easy.
But he said, he goes, I basically got Van Halen back together again. I said, Dad, come on, let's go. And there, it's funny, when we were out at Sibelius in Long Island recording the Metal Allegiance record, Eddie was doing that week. He did an event at the Smithsonian Institution, and you can see it online. And he talked about it. And Eddie and Alex and Wolfie were right there in the front row, I think. And he said, my son got me off the couch and got me back in the game again. And basically got Van Halen back together.
They even let him write the set list and pick the tunes and all the different kind of Truth album that came out, which I love that album, by the way. But about 75% of that stuff was the old Club Days stuff and demos that have just not been released. So I think Wolfie pulled a lot of that back out and had them rewrite it. And so, he was like the big cheerleader that kind of really made that last round happen. He was.
I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious if anything is going to come out in the next few years, because in that studio there's just boxes and boxes and boxes of reels of unreleased stuff in that studio, and that's just been piling up over the years.
I mean, Wolfie would be the man that would probably have the time and the interest and the dedication to put it together. If there was anybody that was going to do a project like that, he would be the man for it.
Yeah.
He knows the history.
Well, let me ask you guys. Now, this is a very controversial topic in the Van Halen world. Van Hagar. That's it. What do you guys?
Here's what I said earlier.
I read the perfect description of it. That just to me,
Tom, you're 10 years younger than me.
I got to bring this up.
We've always agreed that I'm 70s Kiss, you're 80s Kiss. Last night we agreed I'm 70s Van Halen, you're 80s Van Halen, right? So
absolutely.
And Van Hagar. Right. I mean, look, Craig, you were there, right? You were at 5150. I'm at a basketball game with Craig one night, going to the Phoenix Suns game, and we're just sitting there eating popcorn, watching the game. And he goes, "Did I ever tell you about the time I lived at Eddie Van Halen's house?" I'm like, no, fill me in on this one. And I think it was right as Sammy was coming in the band or something, right? It was like a moment that you couldn't talk about. Yeah. Obviously, you were sworn to secrecy.
No, I wasn't allowed to be around. I moved in January of 2004, and I stayed for the first 4 or 5 months of 2004. And every time Sammy and Michael came over, I wasn't allowed to be around. I had to go down the hill to the guest house every time they came over because there was so much tension between them. And it's interesting. They hired a couple of kids that were in college in film school to document this reunion of Van Halen. They were going to put out an album. It was an album of best ofs that had 2 new tracks on it. And
the best of both worlds one.
That just had the 2 new songs.
And the
on
Me
it.
Wives Magic and Yep.
And so they had these kids entrenched with them to kind of document everything that was happening. And what took place was so ugly that they decided to just scrap the whole thing because there was just a lot of ugly stuff that was exchanged during those sessions.
Metallica went with it. It worked for them.
Well, those 2 kids now are trying to put that material out. They've been fighting in court because they still have those tapes, and they're trying to release this stuff. And I know that there's been a lot of issues with fighting them in the court. So I don't know what's going to happen with that now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, with Edward's passing, I hope it would be done at least with his family's consent, because it would be
absolutely
distasteful to do it now. If they were fighting against the Van Halen family, I think the respect to them would have to come first and foremost.
And by the way, that is the big difference between everybody here and my world. I used to be jealous of all you guys because you get to travel with a bunch of guys, and I just thought, oh man, that seems so cool until I did it. And then
you realize it's the worst shit ever.
And I was like,
yeah, it's overrated.
Like you cannot believe how much of a different level of communication skill everybody has. And I was shocked in the middle of such a fun thing, touring around the country and making money doing something fun, that there were people who could be unhappy doing it. It blew my mind. It blew my mind.
John's got his.
But
oh yeah, people can be very unhappy.
John, what you got your hand up? What'd you say?
How much do we miss it?
Oh God!
Oh my God! Right?
Don't know what you got.
So much
don't
that
know what
we're
you got
actually
till it's
going
gone.
out to brave this to play shows. Like,
no, it's like I love you guys. Let's go on tour. I love you guys.
Yeah, I think everybody here probably really welcomed a few months break.
But now that's over.
Like the 6 or 7 month mark, like, oh my God.
Yeah, all right, all right, so let me put it to you like this. If any of you could tour right now, but it had to be with Yngwie, would you do it?
With Yngwie?
No.
Tim Ripper Owens, who we all know, he said he had some of the best times on tour with Yngwie. Like they'd go to the mall. They'd go to the mall, and he's dressed up as Yngwie with all of his leathers going to the mall in like Dubuque, Iowa. Can you imagine
talk to Ron Ron about touring with Yngwie sometime. He does not share that.
Well, what about 2 of the guys from Sons of Apollo played in Yngwie's band, both Jeff Scott Soto and Derek Sherinian. They both survived Yngwie. And then you have Billy that toured with David Lee Roth and Bumblefoot that toured with Axl Rose. So really, that's a band of survivors. That's survivors.
Also toured with Yngwie as support and had a very unfavorable, experience, to say the
Well,
least.
that's because Bumblefoot's so difficult to get along with. Right?
I know.
Most easygoing guy. Hey, so Alex, we've got on the Sammy Hagar thing, and I think you had a comment. You had something you wanted to summarize the.
Oh, I've been reading up on all the Van Halen tributes and the New York Times and everything. They did. There's a mention about the Sammy Hagar period, and it said keyboard heavy Drek that seemed to be auditioning for a Tony Scott or Taylor Hackford soundtrack, including Love Walks In, which could pass for a second-rate Journey song and is about contact with aliens.
Oh, Jesus. For the record, I love every period of Van Halen.
You got Van Halen. I mean, everybody was making
thought it was
like
funny.
That. The 80s and the 90s, though. It's funny because last night I went on Instagram and did a story where I was just listening. I was just listening to old 70s bootlegs, all the club stuff, the first album stuff, and I was just digging it big time. And I was texting. I have a group text with Chris Jericho and Charlie Benante, and we just always talk about music. So we're texting through this whole thing. And Dave, it's like you were saying with you and Tom, like you're 70s Kiss and 70s Van Halen. He's 80s. It's the same with Jericho. Jericho is 80s Van Halen. He's 80s Kiss. So the whole time me and Charlie are geeking out about these old demos and covers from the club days. And Chris brought up a point which was really valid, and I really respect it. And I realized because I had everything on shuffle, and then some stuff came up from the Hagar period that I didn't even know, because to be honest, I kind of tuned out in the 90s.
I did too.
And to be honest, I said to Chris, it's only fair. We're talking about Eddie Van Halen here. We're not talking about David Lee Roth. It's not one era. Right. Eddie Van Halen spent, from 74 till now, doing Van Halen music, and that included all the Hagar stuff. It included the Gary Shawn album. So if you really want to respect his legacy and his body of work, it's only fair to really give that music a fair listen and shake as well.
No, I agree.
It's part of him. It's part of his legacy.
It's not my thing so much, but the guys in my instrumental band, they're like 10 years younger, and that was their introduction to Van Halen. They heard all that stuff on the radio. So they're always playing it for me. Dude, you got to hear this song. Forget the stuff you've heard on the radio. Listen to that, and they play me the deep cuts. And I've heard some stuff. It doesn't hit me like the original, but it's
Charlie,
right.
Actually, when we were having this little text roundtable thing last night, Charlie brought up something. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing it. But he said he was on a bullet train. I guess Anthrax and Pantera were touring together, and Vinnie Paul was like totally going on and on, praising the Balance album. And Charlie said that Vinny made him sit and listen to the entire Balance album on the bullet train with him, just to say, listen how freaking great this album is. Nobody gives this album a fair shake, and this album is fucking amazing. So even the Pantera guys were still behind Van Hagar,
Well, it's funny. Me and David talk about this all the time, though. Like, David kind of like in the late 80s, early 90s, you got Dream Theater was coming out and getting big. Testament was big. Megadeth was big. You guys were all, Trickster was big. You guys were all in established bands. And a lot of you, like you just said, Mike, you kind of tuned out, but that's probably part of it. Like, we're 10 years younger and Jericho's a little younger. We were still kind of in the fan mode at that point, right. Where you guys probably sort of tuned out and moved on to different things.
I mean, the thrash movement came around in the mid 80s, and that's what I was listening to. I mean, I was listening to the prog stuff as well. But in terms of my hard rock taste, by 85, 86, 87, I didn't want to hear, for unlawful carnal knowledge. I wanted to hear the new Megadeth or Anthrax or Testament album. It was just that the taste.
Well, here's the fact. Here is an undisputed fact. There are only two bands that I can think of, and please correct me if I'm wrong, who survived a singer change to at least the same or even greater success, and that's Van Halen and AC/DC.
AC/DC,
right?
yeah.
That's it. I mean, I remember when the Nicky and Vince fallout happened, and Nicky's our friend, and but when that happened, I remember him saying, well, AC/DC did it, Van Halen did it, no problem. We'll get a new singer and just move on. And obviously, it doesn't work that well for most. And that's Motley Crue, as big as they were.
Didn't work for Priest. Didn't work for Maiden.
God, I remember in that book that The Dirt that came out. I remember Nikki Sixx recalling being in Tucson, where I was living at the time, and talking about that new album with a new singer and how ticket sales were really bad that night for that first date of the tour. And so he announced on a local radio station, anybody who can get to this radio station within 20 minutes, I'll give you free tickets. And he said, if I would have done that a couple years ago, we would have been mobbed. And he said, I walked out and there was just 2 Mexican kids hanging out outside looking for free tickets. And that was it.
Wow.
And
that was actually a good Motley Crue album. It was actually a pretty
it was a
good holiday. It was actually a good record.
I think musicians, we were all excited about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, they're getting darker and more intense. Yeah.
I'd like to know, because I know a few of you guys had a relationship with Ed. I know Steve had a great relationship with Ed, and I'd like to ask anyone here who did know him personally, was there anything about his personality that surprised you? Was there anything that you didn't expect to hear come out of his mouth when you were hanging out with him? That was, I found him to be kind of a pretty humble guy.
I got to chime in because I got to get back to the studio, but I have one thing that I was surprised that I heard out of Eddie's mouth, and then I got to run. But I was at the show, and we were backstage, and everyone was like, all right, come on. It's we got to go. It's showtime. Let's go. Let's do this. And everyone's getting, and then they were like, come on, Ed, we got to go. We got to go. And he goes, what are they going to do? Start without me? And I thought that was so great.
He's one guy who can say, I said that one time, and the manager said, Bud Pregery goes, don't ever say that, right? And I was like, fuck you, you know. You're right. Eddie can say that. He can get away with that, you know.
Steve started with that guitar.
Yeah.
Steve, what about you, Steve?
Let's let John dip out if you got
John, thank you, buddy, for joining in, man. Great to see you,
John.
Yeah. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
See you, buddy. Bye. See you, man.
Steve, what about you?
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, for me, you know, Ed Van Halen, you know, God bless him, and I'm missing my friend. You know, I met Ed back in 1991, NAMM show, 1991. Matt Bruck, another dear friend of mine, brought me in to meet him, and we hit off a friendship that's endured for, you know, close to 30 years. And, you know, the coolest thing I can say about Ed is what a sweet, humble guy he was, for being the biggest rock star in the world, hands down in my world, you know, as far as the rock, quintessential rock guitar player, Ed Van Halen. But when he got off the stage, and Craig, you know this, and I think anybody who's met him, you get him off the stage and get him away from everything, he's just the coolest guy. And his sense of humor was, you know, impeccable. And just like, you know, he would do things like that to where in the middle of the show, I remember being in the pit with him a couple times, and he'd be coming out, you know, doing his solo, and he'd be like, you know, he'd just walk over and he'd go, you know, hey man, you see that weird looking dude out there? What's going on with him? And you know, he's got a weird shirt on. And just the things he would notice, like, why would you notice something so wacky like that?
Yeah.
That's, you know, I think John said that before. He heard things and saw things different than anybody else. And I think that was part of his true genius.
Hey, Steve, I have a question for you. Speaking of that, seeing things. So my daughter has that synesthesia, right? She's got actually perfect pitch. And the only other person I met that is perfect pitch is Jordan Rudess. I remember Jordan was when I worked for PV, Jordan's at the booth trying to play. And I said, dude, you got to start. He goes, you don't understand. This keyboard's tuned down and I got perfect pitch. Right. So now my daughter has it, and I get it. But she also has the synesthesia. Now, synesthesia is when you sort of see colors that relate to sound. And Eddie, from the beginning, always talked about his brown sound. Is that what that was? Did he have that kind of synesthesia thing where he could see colors relating to sound?
It's interesting. That's a good question, because I do remember him always bringing up that search for the brown sound.
The brown sound. I wonder if he didn't, and it's a very rare thing, but it's sort of, you know, it seemed like he might. And you know, you're talking about him being a humble guy. I don't know where Alex went. He probably just said to hell with those guys.
He's back. There he is.
I dropped out.
There he is, Alex. Hey, so Alex, so you probably remember this. Remember that guitar player interview that came out with him probably around the time of Women and Children First? And he was the cover his first cover on Guitar Player magazine.
The very first one.
Yeah, and what came across so clear was just how humble and how cool the guy. I mean, I aspired to be like that. It's like that is
me too. Yeah.
I mean, right? Remember that? That was a game changer, man. Where
I got that. I have that issue. I wasn't when it came out. I wasn't aware of him. Like it was a few years later.
Right.
But I caught up on all his old interviews and. Yeah, it's just like such enthusiasm for the instrument and just so many different things. I think a lot of it gets lost because what he did was so revolutionary,
right?
And the stuff that we all think of, the two-handed tapping, but there's just so much other stuff.
So much.
He did harmonics, like nobody ever did harmonics like that, at least in rock and roll. I guess Jocko was doing it on the bass, but.
Right.
Nobody I know of was doing it on guitar. Atomic Punk, it's going like,
I know, right? I mean, just invent. I mean, he didn't. He
it's just one thing after another, Like,
and every album, he had Eruption on the first album. Then now I'm going to do it on acoustic guitar. Here's Spanish Fly. Then I'm going to do a Volume Swells thing. Here's Cathedral. Then I'm going to do a
Mean Streets.
Beginning of Mean Streets. So it's like every album was a whole innovation.
Little guitars, kind of underrated.
And then when you heard Angus do it with AC/DC, it was kind of like, oh yeah, Eddie already did that.
It was like the same thing. Yeah, it was about the rock. It's the same.
I mean, listen, you know what? How about the beginning of so you got the beginning, right? Then he does it. The little
across all of that.
Yeah, that's 15 seconds into our introduction to Van Halen.
That's actually, if you think about it, that's Eddie's very first recorded moment. At least the first album.
That's the thing we heard. Yeah,
right.
Rick Beato. I don't know if you guys follow him, but he did a great "What Makes the Song Great" about running with the devil, and he soloed up all the tracks, and you can hear in the vocal booth. Where you can hear bleed from the guitar and coming into Roth's vocal booth and stuff into the mic, and the fact that they apparently cut a lot of this stuff live, however they recorded, and Women and Children First was definitely one of that. Those are my two records. The first one and Women and Children First were really because that was Women and Children First. 1980 Invasion is when I finally saw them, and they were just the ultimate summertime party rock and roll band. And the looseness of it, was just so clever and so cool. And
also the production on those, at least the first two albums, you had Eddie on one side, Michael on the other. I mean, it was just there was just 3 instruments, 3 vocals, and that was it. There wasn't layers and layers of stuff. It was like you're literally just hearing them, cut and dry, and it was just sounded like a great rock band, a band that just cut their teeth in the clubs,
But they also did this super quirky stuff, Ice Cream Man, Women and Children First,
right?
Happy Trails.
I know.
Band. Well, I love all those moments.
Diver Down was basically half covers. It was a half cover tune, right? I mean,
and I love that record.
I love that record, front to back.
That was when I was getting into them. That was my entry.
That was your part.
I mean, I'd heard the first album, but like when they came out, in the late 70s, I wasn't even playing guitar yet. And by the time I discovered them, they were on the Diver Down era.
Yeah.
And I caught up on them, and I think I saw them on that tour. I was in the eighth grade. Yeah.
So Steve, you being like steeped, I mean, Alex, obviously you are too, but Steve, you're sitting there with a EVH amp and a guitar in your hand, and being in a Van Halen depth that you are as which is a player. Like, what is kind of some of the most challenging stuff to play? I mean, because it's all got its weirdness, but I mean, just from like either a technical thing or just kind of a personality conviction.
It's all of that stuff, and I think, one of the biggest issues and one of the things people, Ed's big, everybody recognizes Eruption and his lead guitar playing, but the people who really know Ed Van Halen is probably one of the greatest rhythm guitar players.
Hands down.
Stuff. And let's get past all the lead playing, songwriting, because we all know without those great songs, it wouldn't matter how many great guitar players that we know, and especially nowadays in the shred generation that we live in, everybody's technically so great. But where are the songs?
Right.
It's a different time. I get that. But for me, it's one of those things, and Michael know this, and I guess all you guys do. Maybe not you, Craig, but I think you might.
No.
It's the Van Halen brothers. Alex and Edward had a timing thing that the two of them were the only two guys that could play together and do certain things. Now, I've seen every Van Halen tribute band under the sun, and Mike probably knows this as well. How many bands have you seen play Hot for Teacher and not be and screw up the guitar solo? And for that matter, the band, when you see Van Halen live, they never played that song and never played that guitar solo like they did on the record, because it was probably a one-take thing. Especially, we know back in the 80s, Alex and Eddie were both pretty reckless, and the stories about them partying and they'd go in and cut tracks. It was one take and that was it, magic. And there was a intangible timing thing that they had, and that's the hardest thing to recreate. But for me, look, the lead guitar playing, Eruption to me is the greatest guitar solo that was ever recorded and ever will be recorded. And the magic of that was that he only did it twice. It's 2 takes.
Wow.
Really?
Spliced together. And Ed always still in interviews, and he even told me, he's like, I could have played it better. Craig, with his voice.
Yeah.
I could have played it. I tried to do it again, but for that matter, look, the rhythm parts and those, things that Ed would do, the way he would play a chord where it wouldn't be just a power chord. He would add in these cool notes. This chord was his big thing, which was like, he would do that. He had such an incredible rhythm guitar playing thing that to me was even more impressive than his lead work.
So Eruption, that is a splice, right? It's a punch, right? Where it fades out, and you can hear the tubes of the amp just saturating, right? You can hear the sound of the amp, and then it starts with the ripping things. That was a punch, right? Yeah.
I believe I've never even, I'm trying to get in touch with Don Landy and try to get the exact story of where the punch is, because, all the bootlegs and stuff, you can hear the evolution of Eruption. He started really playing that probably back in 1975. That was like his warm-up. I think Alex will tell, we all as guitar players have certain things that we always play, the patented licks. And I think every guitar player, I make this joke all the time about guitar players. All of us, we have about 10 licks. And it's what we do with those 10 licks, or even 5, that are so unique. And Eddie's one of those guys. If you listen to Van Halen 1, he plays the one lick that he does in Ice Cream Man.
Yes.
Yeah. It really got me. This lick, that one thing, he plays that in I'm the One. He plays it in Ice Cream Man. And we all do that as guitar players. But man, those 5 or 10 licks that Ed Van Halen used, man, he fucking sure lit up the world with those.
He also did some real odd licks.
Yes.
Like this is
wide stretch. He was the guy, first guitar player you ever saw.
Totally the wrong guitar to do this on. But,
totally.
Yeah. And
he would go take a pattern on one string and just do the exact same thing. It doesn't matter what the scale is. Just
half a teacher.
All the way across the neck. It makes no sense. He made it work every time, and he does that.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's 10 songs.
I
he
feel
does
good
that.
about
One, the end of Jump.
Yeah,
and it's all like the same lick, and he makes it sound different. And there's other licks like that too. You figure them out. It's like, oh my god, that's exactly what he's here, but I never knew it, because it's like he makes it fit the song, and he turns it. It's amazing.
It makes me feel good that I've been touring, doing the same 10 jokes for the last 20 years here. So I feel good about that.
Trust me, you have, dude. But those 10 jokes are fantastic.
Thank you, Steve. Steve gets it.
I want to say two quick things about what Steve just said. One is about the reoccurring riff usage. So last night when I was having this little listening session with all these things on shuffle, there was this version of Van Halen covering Stevie Wonder's Superstition back in the club
Charlie
days.
sent that to me.
Yeah, I sent it to Charlie. And in the middle of but listen, in the middle of the guitar solo, all of a sudden Eddie goes. He does the eruption theme. So it's obviously a little motif or a little melody that he was always using, and he was playing it, in the club days, and then he eventually brought it into eruption. The other quick thing I want to comment on what Steve mentioned is the magic between Eddie and Alex. They had a chemistry between the two of them, between drums and guitar, that was obvious because they grew up playing together. They grew up as brothers. The only other time I ever saw that was Dimebag and Vinny. I think Dimebag and Vinny had a very similar relationship in terms of drums and guitar. And the biggest irony of all, you guys probably all know, the final words they spoke to each other the night before they got on stage at the Al Rose de Villa was they would high five each other and just say Van Halen.
Van Halen.
And that was the last thing that they said to each other. But
Wow.
a very, very similar kind of chemistry, a brotherly chemistry between guitar and drums.
It was in their DNA and their blood, that they got also from their dad, Jan Van Halen, it was in there. And just, again, it's one of those things where, and Mike, you might know this as well, Alex didn't have anything else in his monitor except Eddie's guitar. And that's all he could do. For years, he had 2 412 cabinets on each side of him. On 50, like stunned. That's part of the reason why Alex, is like, 80% deaf. But, man, geez.
Well, and the funny thing is they Alex was the guitar player and Eddie was the drummer, right? So just that moment. I mean, talk about just the planets lining up, the gods just go Shazam, and it's like switch instruments and there it is, I mean, it's just, there's so much magic in that family, so much and then of course with Wolfie, he's a Van Halen. I mean, he's of the pedigree, So
I do remember a story when I was living there that that happened during the recording of those 2 new songs that Ed told me that they were trying to teach Michael a bass line. And this was according to Ed, that they were trying to teach Michael a bass line for a song. Michael wasn't getting it. Wolfie was 13 at the time and said, "It's just like this." And he started playing it. And everyone just kind of looked at him like, wow. Yeah.
He's a Van Halen.
There's a lot of foreshadowing there too that we probably don't even need to get into.
Yeah. Oh, back then he talked a lot about I want to just take my kid out and do a real Van Halen tour, just me and my kid and my brother. Wow. He talked about that a lot back then,
and then it happened.
He said that to me as well. I know that story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, this has been an awesome freaking just think tank and honorarium and memorial. I've seen some people say that we are their heroes the same way that our heroes that we're talking about, Neil Peart, Eddie Van Halen. So go to the gym, take your vitamins, eat good, and let's keep it going for our fans too. So
Dave,
we don't think about that because we're just sitting here hanging out bullshitting and we're all friends. But
before I go, can I share one Eddie story that is my favorite Eddie story?
Sure, of course.
I don't know if Mike's ever heard this. I'm pretty sure I told Dave. I'm pretty sure I told Steve. I don't know if Alex has heard this. But the first night that I met him was at a bowling alley. Matt brought him to the bowling alley to come bowling with us. And Eddie knows everything about me. He's been hearing about me through Maddie. And he starts telling me my life story. One of those stories was I told a story on the air about how I've been broke my whole life. And all I've ever wanted to own was an illegal cable box. That's all I've ever wanted. Was one of those boxes that unscrambles all the channels. And so at the bowling alley, Eddie, who is smoking, you're not supposed to be smoking in the bowling alley, he goes, "Dude," he goes, "I heard you were broke your whole life." He goes, "That's crazy. Me too." And he said, "And I heard that all you ever wanted was a legal cable box. Is that true?" And I said, "Yeah, that's true." And he said, "That's crazy because," and he looked both ways and he went, "I got an illegal cable box too." And I said, "Really?" And he said, and Eddie said, "Yeah." He goes, "The thing is, I'm fucking rich, but don't want to pay for cable." And I was like, "Are you serious?" What? Like, yeah, it It was one of the most absurd conversations I've ever had in my life.
That's amazing.
There was a few of them with him, but that was one of my favorites. So yeah.
Sure.
Wow. That's a great one. Hey, anywhere you want to share from there.
I just want to say, spending time with Ed, all you gotta, the music is, we're gonna have that forever. All I can say, he treated me, my family, my friends like family. And that the coolest thing that he always said to me, Steve, anytime you want to come to the show, you call me, you're family. And that means the most to me. And Craig, I know you know all about that. We would see each other at shows, and I've been, again, to his house at 5150, to his Malibu beach house playing volleyball, and Valerie made us turkey chili after the game. I mean, but he was one of the warmest, nicest, kindest guys you could ever meet. And that's what I'm going to miss the most. The music is always there. I wish he was going to make more music, but that's really the person he was. And he'd give you the guitar off his back, the shirt off his back if you needed it, and free cable.
Yeah. And a place to stay.
All right, gentlemen. Love you guys.
Hear,
Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. What
cool.
a great
good
chat. Really good, guys. Thank you.
Alex. Dave.
Over and out.
Steve. I'll see you guys. Dave, love you, man. I'll see you.
Yep.
Love guys.
All
right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
And then they drop off one by one.
One by one.
Craig, Gas, and Alex are still here, though.
Hey, we're ready to start our podcast.
Right now, we can tell the real stories.
Yeah, right. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks again for joining us. Those stories were amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I'll see you.
I hope you get that illegal cable box. I got the last word. All right, kids. Have a good night. I know. Well, why was I here? I'm just like the Make-A-Wish kid. Bye, kids. We'll see you soon. Hey, Steve. What's up, buddy? Night, night.